Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Live. I'm Mike King, and I had a batch of you sending emails wondering what I thought about the Curtis Reeve verdict. So I thought, why don't we all just jump on and talk about it a little and see how everybody's feeling? So that's what I want to do. No special agenda other than I'm going to play the verdict again for those who maybe missed it, and then just chat. I'd like to hear from you, kind of how you're feeling. So, Ninja Mama, hello. Alana Hammer, hi. Road Trek Girl, Aaron D, thanks for jumping on early. And we'll let a few folks come in, but it'll be interesting. So, I'm going to start right off with Road Trek Girl. I hope he agrees with the verdict. I did. Watched. Let's see, Rikita and Bronca case should not have been charged. So yeah, what do you all think about this? Elena Hammer's not familiar with the case. If any of you happen to see on the day of the opening arguments, I was on court TV with another prosecutor. And one of the things I found so interesting from the very get-go was the amount of objections that the prosecution was throwing out. I mean, even in the opening statement by the defense, as soon as they started talking, the prosecution was just hammering them one time after another about everything. And you could almost sense that the judge, and I wonder if the jury was frustrated that they weren't allowing the defense to even do their part. But I don't know. It's interesting. So let's go through some of your feelings, because I think East Tennessee life, you speak for many people as well. I'm disgusted by the verdict. This entitled bully provoked the victim over and over when he responds by throwing popcorn. Defendant already has a gun out and ready to shoot. Now, I don't know if he did have the gun out at that point. I watched the videos really carefully. I watched him in slow-mo because, again, excuse me, I was on court TV a number of times talking about the case. I was a SWAT officer during my career. I can tell you one thing, that you train nonstop as a SWAT officer, and frankly, as a police officer, of when you should be able to use a weapon. I'm like many of you. I mean, popcorn isn't a reason to shoot someone. And apparently the defense has been successful in arguing that Curtis Reeves was threatened and needed to display and then fire his weapon. But it happened so quickly. If you watch those videos, he pulled that trigger in a fraction of a second. And for a guy who is old and decrepit, like he tried to get himself presented as during the trial, he clearly drew that weapon quickly. He was able to point it and shoot it, and of course kill that man. So yeah, that's interesting. This is going to be an interesting. Here's one from Mark. I thought he was guilty, shot dead for popcorn. I mean, he said over and over again he has wished that the day would have never happened, and I suspect that is true. There are absolutely no winners in this case. A decorated career ending this way is just, this is all he'll be remembered for. And to think that they could have just got a different seat or gone to a different show if things were that distressing is troubling to me. This is all about stand your ground. And stand your ground, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is a law that says you shouldn't have to retreat. And then, of course, the defense was successful, as we've seen, by presenting that he feared for his life. Now, I found it interesting that the defense took some of the angles they took. I almost expected that the defense would say that they didn't know, or he didn't know, if that was a weapon with the phone, the black phone case, when it was coming toward him. And that would have seemed more plausible for a reason to fire your weapon if you could argue effectively that you thought it was a weapon. But he didn't. He said I was going to be punched, and then they brought on all kinds of experts that said you could be seriously injured. I've had a concealed weapons permit for as long as I can remember. I carried a weapon as a police officer, and I haven't taken one to a movie theater. And yet, when the shooting occurred in Colorado and a number of people were murdered, I thought it's too bad there wasn't a law enforcement officer in there to stop that threat. So let's keep looking and see what some of your thoughts are. And then in a moment, I want to play the verdict. So let's see here. And the back office, I think Skylar is at the Jazz game tonight, and Tyler is at an awards function, hopefully getting some kind of a really cool award for a video that he created through his company. So that'll be nice. Let's see. Road Trek, a lot more to it than popcorn. I can't watch this. I suggest, oh, well, good. See you later if you can't watch it. and thanks for stopping by. If that's what you're saying, hopefully you'll stick around. So we'll see what happens there. Jen Lowe says, stand your ground wasn't the case. Was not this the case, stand your ground? And that's exactly what they were arguing, is that Florida law allows the stand your ground doctrine. And of course, he felt threatened, and he's using that for his reasons that he responded with deadly force, because he felt like he was going to be seriously injured, if not killed, by the assault that he successfully argued. And folks, we got to honor the jury. In a minute, I'm going to show a video of the victim's spouse. I mean, holy cow. For 8 years, she's been victimized by this thing. She was trying to stop her husband. I suspect Reeve's wife was trying to stop him. One of the problems with testosterone, in my opinion. And I'll try to not be too political tonight as we talk. So we'll keep going. So yeah, this is interesting. Slam RN, I was shocked. I didn't think the defense was good. You know, I'm going to go back to what I said early on when I started, and that is I did think the defense did a good job. And I worried from the very beginning that the prosecution was digging themselves a hole and creating a little bit of adversarial positioning with the jury. And if you remember, and if you go back and watch my first interviews on Court TV on the morning of the opening arguments, we kept talking about the fact that the prosecution kept objecting to almost everything that the defense was saying, so much that it was potentially, in my opinion, becoming a little bit of an irritant for the jury, who wanted to hear what was going on. That continued through the whole trial, objection after objection. The prosecutor today in his closing arguments, I thought, did a great job, but he was personalizing it too much. Of, I wouldn't do this. Well, the defense did a good job of saying, put yourself in the shoes of a 71-year-old man who's got a bad back and a little bit intimidated. And a comment that made a few people mad at me, that I'll say again anyway, is I really don't have a problem at all with police officers after they retire carrying a weapon. Federal law allows us to do that. It encourages us to do that. And in many cases, it makes sense. But I wonder if there should be some rules in place to check the cognitive ability of us as we get older. I was thinking today, I've had a pilot's license since I was 16 years old. And about 10 years ago, I quit touching an airplane control altogether, because I just could tell I was kind of losing the edge. I didn't have the reflexes and the cognitive ability. And I think I'm still kind of a young guy. At least I feel as immature as the day I graduated from high school. So we'll see how that goes. So anyway, let's see. Hi, Wendy Henschel. Nice to see you. Diane Campbell. Diane says, yeah, dumbfounded by the verdict. Here we go. One juror matters, and had this had nothing at all to do with stand your ground. Interesting. So they effectively argued that, and it's going to be interesting. I think many of you are expressing what most people that I was watching online was expressing. I was watching during the closing arguments today, and there was rarely someone who said this guy is going to get off on this. So I don't know. Let's see. Oh my gosh, we keep talking about that. Let's keep moving. Let's move on there. Let's see. This is the same Genelo from Crime Talk. Let's see. Elena, hello. Let's see. I don't know what this means, Dr. Whisper, but dude, okay. Let's see. Now here's something that I guess is what I kept going back to, because I've done this before as well. CF, gosh, do I have that right? Santagallo. I've moved a seat in a movie theater when someone was being disruptive at the beginning and even into the movie. I don't understand why he and his wife just didn't move to other seats. I bet he wished he would have done that after all of this happened. But it is something that you really wonder is, again, I blame it on testosterone, but why not just move? You know, it's a movie, and go get your money back and come back another day or something. But anyway, we'll see. So, hey, let's take a minute, and I want to watch the verdict with you, and then maybe talk at a couple of points along here. So let's jump in and watch this.
In the courts of the 6th Judicial Circuit in and for Pasco County, Florida, State of Florida versus Curtis Judson Reeves, case number 2014 CF 216 CF AXES. Information for count 1, murder in the second degree. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows. The defendant is not guilty. So say we all, this 25th day of February 2022, juror number 2, foreperson.
Now I wanted to stop there for a minute, because I don't know if you were paying attention. I often try to pay attention when a verdict's read to see what the reaction in the audience was, what the reaction with the defendant was. And you know, I noticed throughout this entire trial that Reeves stayed very stoic. He rarely showed his cards on his face. And that frustrated a lot of people who complained that he was being arrogant, that he was, you know, reading all kinds of things into it. Well, here's a moment where after 8 years, he gets the verdict that he probably didn't think would happen, but that he certainly was hoping for. And no change in affect. He maintained that same stoic face. And did you notice even in the audience, no one did? Now, there was a woman right behind his wife that I thought I could see tears coming off of her face. And I ran that video back a number of times, and I can't tell if it was somehow a wacky reflection that happened all of a sudden or if it was actually tears dropping off. But I found that interesting. But that was count 1, the second degree murder. They said, no, he did not commit murder. And so let's go to the rest of this for a minute.
In the courts of the 6th Judicial Circuit in and for Pasco County, Florida, State of Florida versus Curtis Judson Reeves, case number 2014 CF 216 CF AXES. Information for count 2, aggravated battery. Verdict. We, the jury, finds as follows.
Now
the
watch
defendant
his face.
is not guilty. So say we all, this 25th day of February 2022. Juror number 2, 4-person.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I found that really interesting. Not a flinch, and of course, you would expect at that moment much more to happen. Now, as we've watched other verdicts recently, when we watched the 3 police officers just yesterday, when we watched the men in the Arbery case being convicted, George Floyd, we saw these eruptions that occurred in there. And I found that interesting. So I'm going to watch here to see what your comments are about that, and if any of you found that as interesting as I did. Anyway, I found that interesting. So this is 8 years after Reeves fired a pistol inside of that. I think it was Wesley Chapel at the movie theater, and it was an interesting jury, in my opinion, because the state of Florida will allow a jury's usually 12 people in a murder case like this, but the state of Florida allows 6 jurors, and both the prosecution and the defense must have agreed to have a smaller jury pool in this particular case. But the thing that I found interesting is this case went on for 8 or 9 days, and the jury came out in 3.5 hours with their verdict. And the only emotion I saw in the jury room initially was Nicole Olson. And she, of course, was, I don't know if you watched her during the day. It was just heartbreaking to watch. She was shaking at times. She bounced her leg almost nonstop through the trial. You could see it kind of just rocking her, and it was probably like a pacifier moment for her throughout this trial to be able to do that, to kind of maintain control. And she had a difficult time standing after the verdict and leaving the courtroom. She was trembling and immediately was taken out by family and friends. And I found that really interesting. I also found it interesting, and I don't know if you caught this, but right before the verdict was read, Reeve's wife reached into her purse and pulled out a bunch of tissues. So she apparently was preparing for the worst as well. So it's interesting. Let's see. And I love this. So there's always an expert out there. Thanks, One Juror Matters. Dude, you don't know as much about as you need to about this case. There was a failed attempt at the hearing in 2017. Facts matter. Thanks. Please get your own channel so I can come over and watch it and get some advice, because you're absolutely right. I can't know every case as well as I do, but I know it enough to be an expert on court TV and to be on there multiple times talking about this case and talking about the background of law enforcement, the training that law enforcement goes through, the reactive things that law enforcement goes through, the law in regard to stand your ground, and whether he was reaching the threshold of second degree. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But thank you for the critiques, because I appreciate that. It kind of keeps me on my toes. And frankly, folks, yeah, there are so many things I don't know about these cases, but I try to share what I have with you on those. Leslie is asking if there's a chance of a civil suit. I think you can almost guarantee that there will be a chance of a civil suit where there is a lower standard, and they may get more out of that. I don't know, but let's watch the rest of this on the verdict today. I just wanted you to see the behaviors of the people inside.
Thank you.
So again, here's Olson's widow, and there just are no winners in these darn things. I don't know about you, but you can't help but feel compassion for these people. Personally, I didn't think that Reeves would be acquitted. I thought he would be found guilty, especially with some of the recent things that we've seen in other cases. Here you see the widow walking out and having a difficult time there. And then, of course, Reeves greeting family members and thanking his legal team. So Let's see if there's a couple questions. If not, I wanted to give you as much of time as you wanted to take, but we'll see what happens here and move on. Here's an interesting question. When we do stand our ground, just because you move your seat doesn't mean that the crazy person won't attack you at any time. Well, no question, but it's isn't it more about risk reduction too? And by moving your seat and giving, going away, boy, I think if Reeves could have done it over again, he would have done it that way. But here's a really important point. Michelle, you guys want an old man to rot in a cage because he shot a 6'4", 250-pound man that hit him, threw a cell phone at him, and reached to hit him again. And that's an interesting and really good point. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, is the defense did a better job of convincing the jury that Curtis Reeve feared for his life and his safety than the prosecution did in saying he was angry and chose to do this anyway. And, there were a lot of interesting arguments. I thought the prosecution made a great argument about this guy talked over and over again about all the karate skills he's had, that he continues to try to maintain fitness, that he wasn't using a cane at that time, that he had spent 28 years in law enforcement and then additional years in security and would understand how to de-escalate, and didn't reach the level that it did because he chose not to de-escalate, or did he do everything he could and the guy wasn't backing down? And bottom line is the defense did a better job of convincing the jury, and we have to respect that. So anyway, it's interesting. So here's a great point from Bluntly. It was justified self-defense. The whole situation is sad. Chad was the aggressor toward an elderly man. So interesting to again think about this. And didn't the defense do a good job of continuing to remind the jury, walk a mile in their shoes? And we're all going to become old at some point, but I don't know about you, but I'm becoming old and there are things I can't do anymore. I don't do things today that I used to do, and I acknowledge that some things I can't. But in my mind, I still get worried if I feel threatened or other kinds of things. So this is an interesting one. We'll see. Let's see what you got here. Hopper's saying face should show something. He looks so cold. Yeah, interesting. Again, we want to put our own projection of how we would react on other people. And that's what's so important about really getting to know who this person is. I suspect he was that same stone face as a SWAT commander throughout his life. And we're not seeing something new that he just picked up. He's probably always done those kinds of things. And Marilyn, I agree. This again is the thing. It's troubling to us because we think, well, I would be showing emotion, but that's where we have to kind of pull back the reins a little bit and say, it doesn't really matter what I would do. I have to understand what they would do over time. And that's why things like body language are always so tricky, because people say, oh, he crossed his legs, so he's not telling the truth. Well, no, maybe he's a lot more comfortable that way. Or that person folded their arms, so they're not telling the truth. Or I don't know if you watch Judge Judy, she says every time somebody's neck turns red that they're lying. Well, no, it might be that they're nervous. And I think, well, Judge Judy, your neck turns red all the time when you're yelling at people. So it's pretty hard to know. I don't think you're lying, Judge, but people react differently. So anyway, hi, Jackie Kerr. Nice to see you. Let's see. Yeah, most of you are saying you think it's kind of a miscarriage of justice. Julie's giving me some advice to don't bite at the trolls. You are absolutely right. And I just wish sometimes these folks that have so much to say would get a YouTube channel so I could go listen to them and offer advice too at times. But then again, I probably wouldn't offer advice because I know how challenging it could be to do this sometimes. Let's see. Here we go. Kathy George, Reeves, as an ex-cop, should have been able to talk the situation down instead of getting out of hand like it did. Yeah, it's really interesting. I think back and I try to personalize for myself. And there were times when, man, I got pretty angry, like on a road and somebody cut me off. And the younger I was and the more testosterone I had, the more I'd puff my chest up. And today I just kind of smile and take it and let it happen. And I just wish we could get a little less testosterone. Maybe we wouldn't see as many wars and as many fights if we could just settle down a little bit. And you know what? It's okay sometimes if you end up in second place because some hothead needs to get in front of you. It certainly isn't worth the trouble. And again, this has nothing to do with our rights to carry weapons, our right to stand our ground, our right to protect ourselves. But if you could avoid it, wouldn't that be just a better, kinder thing to do? I don't know. So, Beach Girl, let's see what you got to say here. So many people want to be armchair jurors when they don't know the facts of the case and they think with their emotions instead of their intellect and apply the law. It drives me crazy. That's a really interesting point because the defense did a great job of reminding the jury of that as well. If you watch that, they kept saying over and over again, it doesn't matter how you feel about this. Here's the standard for this law. Here's the level you have to reach in order to find him guilty. And we need to do that in these kinds of cases to remind people, here's the standard. You have to meet the standard. And the burden of proof on the prosecution in a criminal case is much more stringent. And thankfully it is. And I suspect that there are many people who have gotten away with things they should have because we try to have a higher standard in the courtroom. And when you watch emotion play out, and I could name a number of cases that personally I think emotion played into the verdict rather than what the law says, I don't know that that's good either. So let's see, Bluntly. Kathy is a retired cop. He doesn't upkeep his police qualifications. You can't expect him to be upheld to the same standard as a cop. He has had training in over 40 years. So, that's really interesting. I mean, when I was a SWAT cop, I was thin. I could run a couple miles in full gear without any kind of problem. And look at me now. I'm kind of a fat old dumpy guy. There's no way I could do the things that I did when I was younger, even if I continued to work out, which obviously I don't do a good job at. I wouldn't be the same standard as when I was younger, nor would any of you. And again, so that's kind of why I'm wondering if we'll see the laws evolve a little bit for things like concealed weapons permit holders, that says you got to have some cognitive testing too, some reflex testing, some testing about what's pushing too far and too hard. So let's see. Arctic Cat. Wow, just wow. Let's see. There were times that I just knew that he was guilty throughout the trial. Others that I found myself thinking there's no way that he's guilty. Yeah, isn't that something? And during my time in the prosecutor's office and at the attorney general's office, it was just something we came to realize is it is a crapshoot what a jury's going to do, and you always worried when a jury came back in just a short amount of time, a couple of hours, versus on the flip side, you worried if they took too long. And so when they came back in 3.5 hours, I found that pretty interesting. Let's see. I don't know if I understand what you're saying here, Connie. I couldn't believe what I heard the judge say. If you are talking about it's another conversation on here, and I'm sorry I missed it, so I don't know what you're saying. Uh, yeah, Diane simplifies, I think hits it on the head, is the prosecution didn't do a good job proving that he uh, could have gotten away and not been involved. The defense did a good job of saying, here's an old guy who was fearing for his life and felt like he was going to be seriously injured or killed. And the jury somehow stepped into his shoes and felt that. And, you know, he was found not guilty. Let's see. Elena Hammer says he probably had a poker face because he and his family probably had already been through a lot before it went to trial. Yeah, I think they have been through a lot. But again, I mean, think about it. If you spent 8 years worrying, and I think you'd have to worry that you're going to go to prison, and all of a sudden they said you didn't, it would be really hard not to show emotion. That's really interesting. Well, now the at the conclusion, if any of you have questions, they go through a jury poll where, just to make sure that they get on record, every juror saying, yes, I agreed with this jury. The judge actually went through that poll with each of them, and the judge said, do you agree with the verdict of not guilty? And each one said yes. And so they go through that. That way, it really kind of solidifies that. But I thought it was kind of interesting that the judge reminded the jury that they have absolutely no obligation to talk to the media, but they can if they choose to. So it's going to be interesting to see, excuse me, if the jurors come out and talk. It's going to be interesting to see what the prosecution has to say when this is over. If they take the high road and say it was disappointing, but we respect the jury system, or if somebody's unhappy. But the bottom line is they can never go after him again on this thing. And there's no indication that the feds would try to do that. So that'll be interesting. Let's see. Mindfulness. I have to wonder if the victim had been maybe anyone other than a white male, would the verdict have been different? Reeve seems like he would have been one of those scary cops. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't know. A couple of you wanted to get on and chat about this, and I actually had a free evening where my wife is out with my grandkids tonight, so I had free time to myself. I got some Ben & Jerry's ice cream and figured I'd jump on with all of you. So let's see. So folks, please throw a question up here if you have one for me. Otherwise, we're going to call it a night. But I got to show this one. Don't beep your horn in Florida if you want to live another day. I don't know if that's fair or not, but let's see. Don't know the case much and may seem dumb, but can anyone tell me what the movie was and the time of day? Just wondering. So it was a day video, and it was Lone Survivor. And so I suspect, just because of the topic of Lone Survivor, it was mostly adults. And what you'll see in the video, for the most part, looks like mostly adults as well. Let's see. Well, folks, it's really nice to jump on with you once in a while and just kind of go through things. I took a couple of hard hits today because I posted a little video on the attacks on Ukraine, and I actually lost a couple subscribers today who said, because I said that it was absolute evil to invade Ukraine and injure all those wonderful people, which I have friends. I have an office in Kyiv, and I was just kind of offended that they would challenge that idea that going in and killing people and destroying cities isn't evil. But again, I keep warning myself not to get political. So I guess all I will say is that on both sides of the fence, there are Russian soldiers dying. There are Russians going to jail right now for protesting against what's going on. And there are Ukrainians. And isn't it cool to watch places like Poland, where I was just a few months ago, stepping up and lining up at the borders to take refugees into their homes? I'm just really, really touched by that. So anyway, you're all awesome. It's a pleasure to be with you for the night. And I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for all of your support of Profiling Evil. It really means a lot to me and the team. And cases like this are going to continue to come and go. We'll look at them from time to time. We have to trust the jury system because it's the best system we got. Is it flawed, and is the criminal justice system flawed? Absolutely. There are problems all the time that we could look at and get better. And I guess for those of us who live in the United States, that's one of the cool things about the criminal justice system and the higher courts and ultimately the Supreme Court, is that we actually have ways to change those things and try to continually level set and get things right. And it will take probably many lifetimes to get it right, but at least I think people are trying. So from me at Profiling Evil to all of you, have a great weekend. I hope that you are finding peace and happiness, and I hope that you keep those lovely people in the Ukraine in your thoughts and prayers, because I can't imagine how frightening it would be to be a parent sleeping in a subway with my children and trying to keep them from being terrified. So have a good night, everybody.